It's 1974, Fort Belvoir, Virginia. Someone pushes through a wall of overgrown brush in a forgotten corner of the base and finds a tank, 95 tons of it, half swallowed by weeds, sitting exactly where someone left it decades earlier. Nobody on base can immediately explain how it got there. Records are thin, memories are thinner. The tank has been sitting in this field for 27 years. This is the story of the heaviest tank the United States Army ever built. A machine with 12 inches of armor and a gun designed to punch through concrete, built to smash open the most heavily fortified stretch of border in Europe. And somehow it ended up too heavy for its own bridges, too late for its own war, and forgotten in a field for half its existence. To understand how that happens, you have to go back to 1943. By then, American war planners had a serious problem. Germany's western border was protected by the Siegfried Line, 300 miles of bunkers, pillboxes, and steel-reinforced concrete tank traps known as Dragon's Teeth. A 1943 Ordnance Department study reached an uncomfortable conclusion. Nothing in the American arsenal could reliably crack that line open. Not the Sherman, not the existing tank destroyers. The Army didn't need a bigger tank, it needed a moving bunker. On December 22, 1943, a special ordnance subcommittee met to design exactly that. Major General Gladian Barnes was in the room. So was Brigadier General Lucius Clay. By the end of that meeting, the project had a name: Heavy Tank T-28. The original concept called for roughly 8 inches of frontal armor and a new 105mm gun, specifically chosen because of its performance against concrete. The Ordnance Department wanted 25 of these built. Army ground forces had other ideas. On April 26, 1944, after months of negotiation, the commanding general of Army Service Forces authorized just 5 prototypes. That number would shrink again before this was over. Through the summer of 1944, the design kept growing. More armor, more weight. By July, the projected weight had climbed to 95 tons, 15 tons over the original estimate. General Clay was not happy about it. He sent a formal letter to General Barnes demanding an immediate review of why the vehicle had blown past its approved specifications. The Army wanted answers. The Ordnance Department didn't have a clean one. The tank had simply grown beyond what anyone originally signed off on. Then came the next problem: finding someone willing to actually build it. Baldwin Locomotive turned the contract down. General Electric turned it down too. The job was too complex, too heavy, too far outside anything either company had attempted. On July 18, 1944, the contract finally landed with the Pacific Car and Foundry Company of Seattle, Washington. For one brief moment, the engineering actually delivered exactly what the Army asked for: 12 inches of frontal armor, thicker than almost anything else fielded by any nation in the entire war. A 105mm gun built specifically to tear through reinforced concrete. Instead of a traditional rotating turret, the T-28 used a low casemate hull, a fixed gun position that traded all-around firepower for an even lower, harder-to-hit silhouette. On paper, almost nothing in Europe could stop it, but the real problem was never going to be the armor. It was going to be the weight. A 95-ton vehicle does not move like a normal tank. To spread that crushing weight across the ground, engineers gave the T-28 a second outer set of tracks on each side, 4 full track assemblies in total. Those outer tracks could be unbolted and towed behind the tank, but the process took nearly 2 hours, and even stripped down, the T-28 still couldn't cross a single one of the portable military bridges available at the time. A weapon built specifically to reach a fortified line deep inside Germany might never have physically gotten there. Top speed on a paved road, 8 miles per hour, range about 100 miles. The math was brutal. A tank designed to breach the most dangerous defensive line in Europe could be outrun by a man jogging, and the clock was already running out. By August 1945, the final design had been delivered to Pacific Car and Foundry. The first hull was welded that same month, then everything changed. Japan surrendered, World War II was over. The first completed T-28 prototype wasn't shipped to Aberdeen Proving Ground until December 1945. 3 full months after the war, it was built to fight had already ended. The Siegfried Line had been breached without it. Of the 5 prototypes once authorized, only 2 were ever actually finished. The remaining 3 were quietly canceled the moment the urgency disappeared. What followed wasn't combat, it was a slow, undignified decline. Through 1946 and 1947, both surviving prototypes underwent evaluation at Aberdeen and Fort Knox. In 1947, one of them caught fire during trials at Yuma Proving Ground. The engine was destroyed. The Army broke the tank apart and sold it for scrap. 1 T-28 left. The Army didn't even use it as a weapon anymore. It used it as a paperweight. In the spring of 1948, the U.S. Navy hauled the surviving T-28 to Little Creek, Virginia, not to fight, to test landing craft and heavy trailers. 95 tons of failed superweapon, repurposed as a glorified bathroom scale for naval equipment. On August 11, 1949, the Army made it official. The T-28 program was terminated. The stated reasons: unacceptable mobility, persistent reliability problems, and the arrival of better heavy tank designs already in development. No ceremony, no headline. Just a paragraph in a file closing the book on America's most heavily armored tank, and then the tank itself simply vanished. Not stolen, not destroyed, just quietly left somewhere and slowly forgotten. As the Army moved on to newer programs through the late 1940s and into the Korean War, nobody can say with certainty where it sat for those 27 years or who made the decision to leave it there. What we do know is what happened in 1974 when someone finally pushed through that brush at Fort Belvoir and found it. Outer tracks missing, powertrain components stripped, sitting exactly where it had apparently been abandoned, untouched by anyone who understood what it actually was. The tank that was supposed to be too important to lose had become too forgotten to find. In March of 1975, the surviving T-28 was transferred to the Patton Museum of Cavalry and Armor at Fort Knox, Kentucky. For decades, it sat there as a curiosity. A relic from a war it never actually fought in. In 2011, it made one more move to the U.S. Army Armor and Cavalry Collection at Fort Benning, Georgia, now known as Fort Moore, where it remains today, parked outdoors in a 30-acre display called Patton Park. But the story wasn't quite finished. In January of 2017, while being moved for external refurbishment, the last surviving T-28 broke loose from its transport trailer. The driver failed to navigate a downhill turn at a safe speed. The securing chains snapped. 95 tons of armored steel slid off the trailer. A tank engineered to survive a direct hit from German artillery very nearly met its end on a Georgia hillside 70 years later because of a snapped tow chain. It survived. It always seems to survive. The bigger question is what happened to the idea behind it. The T-28 wasn't alone. It belonged to an entire family of post-war American heavy tank prototypes. The T-29, the T-30, the T-32, the T-34. Bigger guns, thicker armor, same basic philosophy of overwhelming firepower and protection at any cost. By the early 1950s, the Army had abandoned all of them. The future of American armor wasn't going to be built around weight, it was going to be built around balance, speed, firepower, and protection in proportion to each other. That philosophy eventually produced the M103, America's last true heavy tank, and the doctrine that shaped every American main battle tank that followed. The T-28 wasn't a failure of engineering. Every spec it hit on purpose. It was a failure of timing, built for a war that ended 3 months too early and a battlefield it could never have physically reached even if the war had lasted. Today there's exactly one T-28 left on Earth, sitting in a Georgia field in the open air. 12 inches of armor still intact, built to stop a war that was already over by the time it arrived. If you want more stories like this, forgotten machines, classified programs, and the engineers who built things decades ahead of their time, make sure you like this video and subscribe for more. And let me know in the comments, do you think the T-28 could have actually made a difference if it had reached Europe in time?